Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to do a time-lapse of an oil painting that I did actually about 3 years ago. I just posted a real-time version of this into Critique Club if you want to check it out. And it was so much fun to paint. I originally painted this painting about 3 years ago, the skinny version there on the left. And I liked it so much I painted it a couple times. I even painted it in watercolor, and you can find that real-time tutorial on my YouTube channel if you're curious. I'm using some Berlin water-mixable oil paints, and these are sold. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them at Jerry's Outerama. They are buttery, very easy to use, and very affordable. I'm using a mixture of cerulean and viridian for the bottle, and I'm using a mixture of yellow ochre, a little bit of vermilion, and some white, and a little bit of cad yellow in the background. I like to get all the colors I think I'm going to use in a painting in the background before I begin because I feel like it gives it really nice harmony throughout the painting. Now, when you're using water mixable oils, it's kind of like it sounds. You don't use oil solvent. You don't use like mineral spirits. You would just use water if you need to clean your brush or if you just need to thin down the paint a bit. There are mediums that are available for this paint, but honestly, I find the consistency to be really nice, and I rarely will use a medium with these paints. In fact, hardly ever. So they're just a really nice, easy to clean up product, especially if you've wanted to do oils, but the thought of smelly solvents and the pain of cleaning up has kept you from trying it. But all in all, they are essentially an oil paint. So if you had already had oil paints, you would be able to mix these with the oil paints you already have. However, if you mix traditional oils with your water mixable oils, it limits the water mixability and the ease of cleanup that you would get, which is kind of the point of the water mixable oils. I love to have brush strokes in my background. I love that painterly look that we get by having those visual brush strokes. Now, if you didn't like that, if you prefer a smoother look, you can use a fan brush and you can very gently kind of brush over that background and blend things in smoothly. But, I think it looks great to see these, big hunky chunky brush strokes here. Now, the real-time version of this tutorial is about an hour and a half, broken down to 6 bite-sized chunks in Critique Club, so I will put a link to that in the video description if you're curious. This was a lot of fun to paint, and the other fun thing about this is that the jar was my grandmother's, and the berries, neighbor of mine, we actually went around and picked these in our community. There's areas just like along the side of the road where there's just like, tons and tons of these that grow wild in the fall, so it's just kind of a really nice fall still life in my opinion. And you have the complementary color aspect of the orangey reds and the greenish blue of the glass that I think just looks really nice. Now I have my my work surface slightly angled, and I wanted to mention that because with oils, they're a very shiny medium. So if you're used to painting flat on your table, you may find that the glare bothers you. So what you can do in that event, if you don't have an easel, is you could put like a couple books underneath your painting or something to prop it up a little bit to make it easier to see without the glare. If I had my druthers, if I wasn't filming, I actually prefer to paint at an easel with oils, but my filming setup is much better with my lighting to paint overhead like this, but just having that bit of an incline, that I would say maybe like 4-inch incline I have, makes a huge difference in how shiny that is and how I'm able to see it. Now I'm using a small round brush to put in the branches, and then I'm using a small round brush and a little twist to put the berries in. You can also use a Q-tip for this. You could even use your fingers. But like I mentioned before, if you're using traditional oil paints with solvents, or if you're using paints with cadmiums in them, it's probably not the best idea to do that. But a Q-tip works absolutely great if you have problems controlling the brush. Speaking of brushes, I'm using the Mimic Faux Hog brush. Now these are really nice. They perform like your traditional hog paint brushes, but they are synthetic. Another brand that makes a really nice faux hog brush would be Royal & Langnickel under their Menta line and their Zen line. So you don't have to get real fur brushes if you don't want to. Now the hog hair bristles in an oil painting hog brush are byproducts of the meat industry. So, gives them something to do with the hair after they're done with everything else. But if you wish to avoid animal products altogether, I highly recommend the Mimic faux hog brushes. They're just called Mimic Hog, and all the Mimic lines are not animal derived. So they're really good. I would say they're higher quality than the Royal and Langnickel Menta and Zen lines, but they're all pretty good. I haven't had any of them breaking down on me, although I have used the Mimic Hogs much more than the Mentas and Zens. So they just feel like they might hold up a little bit better. In fact, I don't think I would have guessed they were synthetic if I didn't know they were synthetic. So it's a really wonderful option there. Now that said, I find that hog bristle brushes to be very long lasting. I have some that are decades old. As long as you take care of them, they will last you really long. So, that's something to consider. If it's longer lasting, if it's a byproduct of something else, if it means less things being thrown away, that's a good thing too. So, if you already have brushes you love, keep using them. I would never suggest you get rid of brushes that you have and use and love to go and get some more animal friendly option, because the most environmentally friendly option product you can use is the one you already have. So just, use the brushes you have and go in peace. Use them well. I can add smaller details with these. These actually are called Black Swan brushes, and they are a faux red sable, which means you can get really fine detailed lines. I've also found them to hold up with oil paints just fine. Sometimes with synthetic brushes, you can be afraid of them kind of almost deteriorating with the solvents, and maybe it's because the Lucas Berlin paints are water mixable. They don't put as much wear and tear on the brushes. But I have to say, I use my oil paint brushes with both traditional oils and with water mixable oils, and I haven't noticed a problem with those brushes breaking down with either type of oil paints. And I always finish up even my traditional oil paint brushes when I'm cleaning them. I always finish them up with a soap and water wash anyway. So, I just would begin by washing them in solvents, and then I would wash them in soap and water. So, whatever you want. I actually really like the smell of traditional oil paints, but I really like the ease of cleanup with the water mixables. I have more traditional oil paints, but yeah, it's essentially using them. This shouldn't be too much difference. The only water mixable oils I've tried that I really haven't liked has been the Winsor Newton artisan oils. I think they were the first ones to come out with water mixable oils, and I don't think the technology was quite up to snuff yet, because they're very sticky and thin and just weird. And even now, when I've tried them recently, and I still find them to be that way. But I've tried other brands that are fine. I've tried even the Reeves brand I feel like better than the Winsor Newton Artisan brand. I don't know about light fastness, probably not, but as far as just the feel of them being like a traditional oil paint. But I really like these Lucas Berlins. They're very affordable and they're very buttery. So I highly recommend them. Now, when you're doing something transparent, it's really important to consider your background and consider anything that could be either casting a shadow, passing light through, being inside, being around, because all of those objects, all of those light sources will impart something in the glass. The glass will reflect it, or you'll be able to see through the glass to it. So you want to make sure that you're getting all of those nuances in there. It's one of my favorite things about painting glass. And that's why I'm letting that yellow light dance through the jar onto the table. It's why I'm letting colors from the berries get reflected in the water. I'm letting any color I have is fair game. And even colors from the background, you'll be able to see that through the jar. You don't have to do that greeny blue. My original one, I did more of a cobalty blue. So, you can make this work with your preferences. So if you want to have a pink jar and you want to have, maybe some crab apples or something, crab apple branches, or I don't know, you can do whatever you want to do with your painting. It's the principles are the same. It's just the colors you choose and the subject matter you choose that's different. Painting glass is so much fun though. I really love it. I have a little course on painting glass in watercolor in my Teachable school if you're curious about it, but it's fun. It's a subject I always enjoy. And I don't know about you, but when we get into fall time and winter, I have a hankering to paint with oils. And, of course, that's a time when you're usually kind of cooped up inside because it's cold out, your windows are shut, you don't have as much ventilation. So it's just another reason why the water-based oil paints or water mixable oil paints are so nice, because you have that option. Now, if you absolutely do not want to deal with water mixable oils, maybe you're an acrylic painter and you have acrylic brushes and you just don't want to have to invest in another type of paint. There are a type of acrylic paints made by Golden, they're called Open, that will perform very much like oil paint, and you can use your regular acrylic paintbrushes with them. I started off with a Modern Color set of 6, I think it was, and then I used those for about a year. Then I picked up the traditional color set of 6 and a couple open stock tubes, and boy, I think that's a wonderful assortment of colors, and a little goes a long way. So if you are like, I'd love to try oils, but I've already invested in acrylic products or gouache products, and I just don't want to have to invest in new brushes, give those a try. I mean, the paint isn't cheap. That golden paint is more than the Lucas Berlins I'm using today, but it's a wonderful paint, and I highly recommend that too. Boy, there's so much paint to love out there. Luckily, I get to do this for a living, so I get to play with it. I'm adding some final highlights there on the jar to give it we'll give it a couple things. I'm giving it a little bit of volume. I'm able to add highlights at the waterline. I'll be able to add some highlights on the lettering on the jar. I'm able to add that kind of the reflections that's happening on the outside of the jar to give it that little bit of shape, a little more weight, a little more realism. And it's just kind of fun to work back and forth in this manner. I lost my stems though. I got a little too blendy and I lost some of my brush strokes, which I kind of regretted. So now I'm going in and putting them back in. So, oil is very forgiving. It's also very, transformative. Like it can keep transforming and evolving as you go. So, you can always even scrape it off. If it gets too greasy and too much paint on the surface, you can scrape it off with a palette knife and keep on going. It's really a forgiving medium. Now, I'd like to paint alla prima, which means all at once, but you can also paint like a background and let it dry, then go in and paint your subject and let it dry. I mean, that's another wonderful way to work in oils. And if you like mixed media, you could always go in and paint your background with acrylics and maybe even do some collage or stenciling or whatever with acrylics and then go in with the oil. So, it's really, as long as you do the oil last, it's a very versatile medium. And, I would highly recommend and give it a try if you're curious. As long as you don't have any allergies to the paints, which I don't think is pretty common. I don't know anybody that has an allergy to oil paints. I know some people have a problem with the smell of the solvents, but the paint themselves usually isn't too bad. I added a few little dropped berries there on the surface there with a little shadow just to kind of flesh out the painting a little bit. Since I was taking it from a 6x12 to I think this is a 11 by 14. I needed to flesh it out a little bit more to fill the space a little bit better. And of course, you can do this on whatever size canvas you like, which is fun. You can make this into a square. You can make it into a really big canvas. You could take a bigger canvas and add more elements. So here you can see I've put some of the highlights on the shoulder of the jar to give it a little bit of shape. And I have added highlights to I painted in the word ball and added some highlights to the letters. And, just kind of started adding these little kind of final details that really, I think, pull a painting together. I love the yellow on the counter. I really love that. I love that yellow. I love seeing light spill through glass and get magnified. Now, if you want the reference photo for this, it's actually on my blog. If you search ball jar and berries, you'll see my watercolor tutorial, or I'll link up that watercolor tutorial down below if you're curious about it. I use the same photo. I took a photo on my little backdrop when I picked the berries so I'd have it because I thought it was so pretty, and it turned out to serve me quite well because I was able to do a couple tutorials with it. And yeah, it was fun to paint. I really enjoyed it. What's your favorite subject to paint in oil paints if you paint with oils? I'd love to know. Here I'm adding a little bit of dark shadow at the edge of that shadow reflection because generally when you have a shadow like this where the light's passing through, it'll cast a darker shadow on the edge, and then it will be bright and light in the middle where the light's being magnified by the clear water in the jar. So I think that adds quite a bit to it as well. Now, like I said, this took an hour and a half to paint, so don't rush yourself when you are painting. The whole point is for you to enjoy yourself, and that's what a hobby is. Something for you to do to relax, enjoy yourself. Take your time putting in these little details. I'm using that small black swan brush to round out some of the berries that got a little wonky looking, adding little highlights on some of them. You don't have to do it to all of them to get the impression of them all being kind of shiny and highlighted. You just have to do a few. And it kind of adds a little sparkle, which is nice. Nice to have a little sparkle, especially for the holidays. I feel like this is a type of painting that can be up for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, all through the wintertime. And I hope you enjoyed this project. Check out the full-length tutorial in Critique Club. And until next time, happy crafting.